everyone, welcome back to my knitting podcast. The last time I uploaded was in the fall, and I've had a lot of life updates since then that I'm excited to share about. I have a finished object and 3 works in progress to talk about. But really quick, I want to say hello to anyone new here. My name is Dakota and I love knitting. It brings me tons of joy and I talk all about it here. So yeah, let's get into some life updates. The biggest life update is that I got married. I think I had mentioned in previous podcasts that I was getting married, but our original date was May of 2025. So over last summer and last fall, we were talking a lot about possibly getting married sooner. So after a lot of conversation and talking to loved ones and prayer, we decided to get married a little bit sooner. So we got married on November 30th of 2024. It was just me and him and our pastor, and then family and friends that are in our bridal party. So it was really nice. And we are still having a wedding this coming May because we booked the venue already. And it's been really fun to plan for, and yeah, excited for that. So we got married, we moved in together, we adopted 2 cats that you might hear or see running around. And yeah, it was just a season of life of preparing for marriage, getting married, and now adjusting to being married. On top of that, our work schedules have really ramped up, so it's just been a lot of change, and that's why I haven't been around. And I also really had not been knitting for those few months. I even have a work in progress from the fall that is still not done that we'll talk about. It's almost done, but it's not quite done. So yeah, knitting just wasn't my priority at that time, but over the last couple months since January, I've slowly been getting back into it, and it's been so wonderful to be knitting again and just crafting and getting back into hobbies. We are planning some bike trips this year. I took my bike to get serviced, so finally getting back into hobbies has been really lovely. So yeah, let's talk about my first and only finished object, which is what I'm wearing right now. This sweater pattern is the All Fall sweater, and it's by Natalia of Casual Knit Studios. This is my first and only test knit that I've ever done. I had such a lovely experience test knitting. The designer was very accommodating and very responsive. The pattern was easy to read and quick to knit up. We did only have, I think, 4 or 5 weeks to knit, but the sweater is knit with a worsted weight yarn, so I guess it went by kind of fast. I was really missing about to miss the deadline, but I got it done and blocked the day of. So it ended up working out. Yeah, everyone in the chat was great. I think the only difficult part was our chat, our test knit chat was on Instagram. So going back and finding the pattern through the thread of messages was kind of difficult, but really that was the only downside to it. And yeah, other than that, I have only good things to say about it, and I am so happy that I have the sweater. This is one that I reach for most, I would say. Out of all of my knit sweaters, I think it's the most easy to dress. It's super cozy and comfy, and let me share a little bit about the pattern. This sweater features a very relaxed fit, slouchy sleeves, but there's parts of it that make it really modern and classy and easy to dress up or down. So you have this beautiful high neck, you have this beautiful shoulder detail. It's super unique. I don't even know what it's called. It's not a saddle shoulder. I think it's called an English style shoulder or something like that, but I have not seen this in other knitting patterns in the years that I've been knitting. So it was unique to me, and I think it just really elevates the sweater. I think the short rows really pull this together and give it a classy look. This sweater is knit with a worsted weight yarn. You can hold a sport weight and a light fingering together, or just a worsted weight strand on its own. That's what I did. It is knit with a the main body is knit with a 4mm needle, and then you have a 2.75 and a 2mm needle for the ribbing and detailing, and then also a 3.5mm crochet hook, and that comes in handy when knitting the neckline. The sweater is available from sizes extra small to extra large, and the intended positive ease is 20 to 25 centimeters. Well, when I started knitting this, I was on a time crunch, so I didn't knit a swatch. I just started knitting and measured my gauge as I went, and luckily I met gauge, which is 20 stitches and 26 rows. I think actually my row gauge was slightly off. I think I was at 28 rows, but it ended up not making a big difference. It was more important that the stitch gauge was correct. Another funny thing about this is I definitely made a statement in my last podcast that I was never knitting bottom up again, but I applied for this test knit not knowing that it was bottom up, and then I got accepted and I saw that it was bottom up. And I really thought for a second, like, am I gonna knit this or not? And I decided to knit it, and I'm really glad that I did because I actually love the fit of this sweater. I'm glad I overcame my fear and frustration with bottom up knitting, and yeah, now I don't feel so scared to tackle it in the future. I think I've realized where my mistakes have been and why the fit has always been a little bit off while I'm knitting bottom up, so it was a nice challenge for me. I knit my sweater in the size small, and like I said, my gauge was a little bit off. I had 20 stitches and 28 rows opposed to 20 stitches and 26 rows. I knit mine with the Fibre Company Cumbria or Cumbria yarn in this lovely color called Blencathra. I'll talk about the yarn in a little bit, but first let me tell you about the knitting experience. So the designer gives you two options. You can do tubular cast on or a long tail cast on, and I chose to do a long tail cast on because I was unfamiliar with tubular cast on, and I was also in the car when I casted this on. So I went with long tail cast on. I think it looks totally fine. It fits totally fine. I just, now knowing if I had more time, I would opt for the tubular cast on, but either option is fine. Then you knit a few centimeters of ribbing, and then you get into the body. The really unique thing about this pattern, I think, is that the designer gives you two options. You can either knit it flat or in the round. I chose to do it in the round because that's what I'm most comfortable with, but you do have the option to knit it flat and then seam everything up at the end. So basically for me, I was knitting in the round until I reached the underarm where I split for the front and back panel. At that point, I was knitting flat, and you're just doing basically a flat panel, shaping the armholes and for the neckline. You end up doing these series of short rows along the front and back, and then you will knit this beautiful shoulder strap that ends up connecting with the rest of the front and back panels, and then you're just knitting the sleeves in the round and finishing off with some 1x1 ribbing, and I did my tubular bind off to finish off. And the neckline is what I finished with. So with this neckline, I learned a new technique that I absolutely love. So rather than going and picking up the stitches just from the stitches that are casted off, you actually go in with a crochet hook and make a crochet chain all the way around, and that is what you end up picking up stitches into and knitting the collar. I think it turned out super clean, much more so than if I would have just went into those stitches and picked up. I love how it turned out, and I will definitely be using that technique in the future. And then yeah, you just knit this really nice long neckline. It's not folded over or anything, it's just single layer, and then I did the tubular bind off for that. I always do 2 sets of double knitting before I do my tubular bind off, or I find that the tubular bind off just looks kind of sloppy. So yeah, I Absolutely love this. I just want to mention I did knit mine on the recommended needle size. In terms of the yarn, so like I mentioned, I used the Fibre Company Cumbria yarn. It was my first time ever using that yarn and I really love it. I will say that it's a little bit itchy, but it's nothing unbearable. I absolutely adore this color. It's a beige color, but there is variation in it of grays and different tones of beige and white, so it looks a little bit variegated, but not enough to be overpowering. I love a yarn with some slight variation in it, so I love the color of this. I was reading reviews online of this yarn and a lot of people had complaints that it pills super fast. I have worn this quite a lot since September and it's just now started to pill to the point where I do need to depill it. So I would say it's not that bad. You know, it's been quite a few months of wear and to now just have to pill it, I would say that's pretty good in my book. It is very warm. Overall, good experience knitting with this yarn. I would definitely knit with it again, I think. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this sweater. I highly recommend it. I'll leave it linked, the pattern linked down in the description box for you if you are interested in knitting it. So this next project has been on my needles the longest. I actually had planned to film a whole project vlog on this sweater, but with everything going on, I had barely even been knitting it or filming, so I have not been able to fulfill that, unfortunately, but I will have a podcast talking all about it when it's finished. This is my zipper sweater by Petite Knit. I have quite a lot done. It's actually almost finished. And this is the back. I am knitting the size small and my version is on 5.5mm needles. I'm holding together a worsted weight yarn and a lace weight yarn. So this pattern is knit with an Aran weight yarn. The pattern calls for 5mm needles, but with my swatch, I met gauge with a 5.5 and I just like the fabric a bit more with the 5.5. So I have one sleeve done and one where I'm about to start the ribbing, but I have some modifications I have to make. So I'm almost out of yarn. I'm not worried about running out of the alpaca, but I'm worried about running out of my worsted weight yarn. So really quick, I'm using the Natures Spun worsted weight yarn and the Sadnes Garn alpaca lace held together. I'm hoping that I'll have enough to just get through the ribbing, but the ribbing is quite long on the sleeve cuff. So what I think I'm going to do, after I tried this on, and this is pre-blocked, this sleeve is pretty long. Like, even before being blocked, this goes past my fingertips, and I know after blocking it's gonna be really long. I know that that's how the pattern was written, and in Petite Knit sample, the sleeves are quite long, but I just don't need them to be that long, and if I can cut back and use some of this yarn to avoid having to buy more yarn and, you know, the shipping and everything, I think I'd rather just do that. So I am going to go back and shorten this sleeve and pull from some of the yarn. I think overall I'll just be happier with the fit. Having super long sleeves is not something that I love. I do love a good long sleeve, but not one that's like completely hanging over my hand. Like in this sweater, this is like the perfect length where I can just pull it up and you can still see like my fingers hanging out, but I don't really want something that my hands are completely useless. So yeah, I think that's the plan after I'm done filming, that I'm gonna go and unravel back to the appropriate length. Where I'm at now, when I try this on, it hits like right above my wrist. So I think with the super long ribbing, I think you knit like 6 inches of ribbing, I want to say. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's gonna fit perfectly. And then the other modification I have to make was something that I messed up on. So I'm so used to knitting sweaters where when you're done with the body, you go down in needle size to do the ribbing. And I didn't read the pattern correctly, and you're not supposed to do that. So I had knit my bottom ribbing and it's just too cinched in for my liking. And then when I went to go read the pattern, you're actually supposed to continue in the needle size that you knit the body. So I have to go back. I mean, I don't have to, it looks fine, but I really want to go back and re-knit it in the 5.5 millimeters. I just don't love how cinched in it is. Even after blocking, like, it's still gonna give kind of a cinched in look that I just don't want with this sweater. I like the flowy vibe of it, so yeah. We're gonna go back and fix this and make sure that it's something that I'm going to wear. And then all I have to do after that is do the zipper panel and sew down my zipper, which I already have. I did buy the one from the Petite Knit website, so I'm so excited for that. I have tried it on and the yarn just feels lovely. Personally, I think that this sweater is kind of like rugged looking. I know it's pre-blocked, but just the color alone gives me like a ruggedy outdoors feel. The worsted weight is very toothy and woolly, so that's probably what's making it like that. And just the color, like I imagine myself outside hiking with this. It's definitely not like super, the yarn isn't like super polished, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I love it. I absolutely love this, and I love the color. It's like this really unique purpley brown color. I don't know if the camera is picking it up well, but it's just a very cool tone brown that almost leans purple, which is really cool. So yeah, until next time, hopefully I'll have my zipper sweater completed, and I can't wait to wear this before winter ends. Okay, so my next work in progress is 2 socks. So works in progress, I guess. I'm actually almost done with this. I'm planning on finishing this today or tomorrow because I want to be able to wear them to the winter retreat this weekend. I'm going away on the winter retreat with the youth group at church, and I'm really excited, but last year it was so cold and snowy, and I would really like to have a nice warm pair of wool socks with me when I go. So here's one sock completed. These aren't blocked yet, but here's one. So these are the Fletching socks by Jessica McDonald. They are a basically vanilla sock, but with some color work included in it as well. So the pattern originally calls for a heel flapping gusset, but I opted to do a short row heel. I personally don't love picking up stitches. It's something that really gives me second sock syndrome, second sleeve syndrome. It's like a mental barrier that I have to get over. So I like the short row heel because you don't have to pick up any stitches. You can just keep knitting in the round after you knit the short rows flat. This sock is knit with a sport weight yarn. I'm using Retrosaria Vovo in this cream color and then in this black color as well. I'm knitting my socks on 2.75 millimeter needles, which is what the pattern calls for. And these are fitting just lovely. I mean, pre-blocked, this fits perfect. I love the length of it. It comes up maybe mid ankle, not quite to my calf, but like mid ankle. I don't really know what to say about this. I do have this little thing on my other side of my color work where you can see where I join the colors. I don't know how to prevent that. I honestly don't do color work often, so there's a lot I still need to learn. I would love to knit a color work sweater, but I just have a lot to learn when it comes to color work. So this was a really nice in-between, something that was super easy and fun, but you know, not too difficult where I'm like struggling to read the chart or anything. I thought the color work chart was very easy to read, and I love how they turned out. This is my second sock. I've just now started on the toe decreases. I'm trying to make my toe a little more round. So when I was doing my decreases, let me put it this way. I did a decrease round and then 2 rounds of plain knitting and then another decrease, and then I did 1 by 1, like 1 plain knit round and then 1 decrease, and I do think that it gave a nice little rounded toe. Sometimes I like a wedge toe, but for these I just thought a nice round toe would look cute. The fabric is very stiff. I don't know how these are going to hold up because there's no nylon or anything in them. I had originally intended to knit mittens, or yeah, mittens with this, but after another sock failure with this yarn, I was trying to knit mittens, but I just couldn't find a pattern that I wanted to, since I had more cream yarn than black, and I ended up landing on these socks and I love them. I do have leftovers. I think I actually will knit a pair of mittens because I'll have more black yarn, and I think that I would like a black mitten with the cream colored colorwork as the contrast color. So I'll probably end up using the leftovers for mittens, but I think these are going to keep my feet super warm and comfy while I'm away. Oh, and by the way, I am knitting the adult medium. So yeah, that's all I have to say about my fletching socks. Okay, so my last work in progress is something that I've recently casted on in the last few weeks, and that is my Kara sweater Solo by Knit. There's not much to see. I tried to put this on a hanger, but it just doesn't really look like anything, so my apologies. Hopefully by next time we'll have more to look at. But this is a beautiful cable knit sweater, oversized fisherman type of sweater. And so far I'm just working through the yoke chart. So I cast it on for a size small, which is intended to have 14 centimeters of positive ease included in it. So I'm choosing to knit the size small. I'm just working through the cable chart and it's pretty easy to read. I'm having a really fun time knitting this. At one point this was all I was knitting because I was addicted to it, and but I had to stop it because I wanted to finish some other things. I just love all the different types of cables that are in this. You have this honeycomb cable pattern, just some more traditional cables. I haven't gotten into it, but there's like some tighter, smaller cables as well that kind of runs around along the underarm, and it's after you finish your raglan increases, I believe. I still have some other cables that I have to add into it as I grow the sweater. It also features rice stitch, which I still have yet to get to, and this 7-stitch raglan. I'll try to show you, but the stitches are kind of scrunched up right now. Yeah, it's this really nice 7-stitch raglan repeat. So yeah, I'm really loving this. I'm knitting this with Isager Jensen, which is a DK weight wool, and that's what the pattern calls for. I'm knitting this on the recommended needle size, which is a 4mm needle. And my gauge was pretty spot on. My stitch count was spot on, but then my row gauge was just a little bit off. And from just what I was reading, it's okay if your row gauge is a little bit off. I just have to be careful with my yoke depth and the length of the sweater and the sleeves. So after I finish the yoke, I'm probably going to add a collar and block it. Something really interesting about this is that the neck hole is huge, but I was reading that a lot of people had this issue. It's not really an issue, it's just that the neck hole starts out huge, and then once you knit the collar, it all like comes together. So I'm just gonna knit my collar after I do my yoke and just make sure that everything comes together seamlessly and do a nice block. I love this color. I think it's going to be very flattering. I don't know the color, but I can leave it down in the description. It's just this really beautiful, rich, reddish brown, like hazelnutty, chestnutty. I wouldn't say hazelnut, maybe like a chestnut, walnutty kind of brown, and it's just so like vibrant and rich. I love it. So I'm hoping, the lighting's kind of washing me out a bit, but I'm hoping that this will be flattering on me. I just couldn't say no to this color when I saw it. So yeah, I really don't have that much to say. My plan is to get through the yoke by next time that we chat and be able to hang this up on a hanger. So yeah, this is my Kara sweater by Les Knit. All right, so that's all I have to share today. Thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in keeping up with my projects with me, definitely subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it. Until next time, happy knitting, and I'll see you in the next one.